Hello and welcome to one-on-one interview series of Urban Update. Today we are sitting in a post-pandemic world. We are talking about cities changing priorities. We are talking how cities can become resilient. We all know that cities are engines of economic growth and the nations are focusing on how to make cities resilient, make economically sustainable, and also to follow what the SDGs are saying, what are the SDG objectives, and act accordingly. We in India also, in the post-pandemic world, we have seen that cities were the hardest hit. They suffered a lot, people suffered, infrastructure collapsed, but now cities are rebuilding. And during that time also, many government schemes help cities to respond to the challenges they have never seen. It was an unprecedented time. So now today, when we are going to talk about cities changing priorities, cities rebuilding their roadmap for SDG agenda, for Paris Accord, and also addressing climate change related issues. So today we are going to talk about all these issues with none other than Director of National Institute of Urban Affairs, Mr. Hitesh Vaidya. Sir, now I will come to you and would like to know, during the pandemic, how cities responded, how Government of India made plans so that cities were able to respond to this new challenge. And one more addition to this whole question, what the Government of India's plan when they were dealing with this new problem of COVID-19. So how did everything happen so suddenly, and this Government of India made so many plans. There came plans for the street vendors, they came plans for the medical professionals, solid waste management, lot of things were happening. What NIU was doing, and how they were supporting Government of India in whole scheme of things.
Good, thank you for asking this question. And I think it's as you use the word pandemic world and out of pandemic world, I think that's lot of things have changed pre-pandemic and before a pandemic. It's like saying before Christ and after Christ. That's the change which we are now looking at it. And as far as NIU is concerned, NIU, as you know, is a think tank of Government of India. Our key mandate is to build the capacities of urban local body, do a research on the ground, and do advocacy towards the reform and new ways of doing things. And I think all three mandates were really applied during the after pandemic. While cities, I will say, has really responded very well during the pandemic, and we used to say that our cities are not prepared, but I particularly feel that our cities, the way they responded to the pandemic situation was a great way of handling the situation, and I think our cities did much better job than any other cities in the world, and we were comparable to the world. While after pandemic, main key tasks which cities have to rebuild their infrastructure, rebuild their capacities, rebuild their a way of engaging with citizens, which they learned during the pandemic time was, and NIU is supporting on this rebuilding exercise, is through creating a templates. So preparing a DPR, creating what type of standards you are looking at, so creating those templates with for the cities, so that cities can respond to the needs much better rather than again every city preparing it. We can give a standard template to all of them so they can prepare their projects much faster. Second is, we also are giving them a lot of information on the technologies available. So the technologies which are available both in terms of digital technologies, also infrastructure technologies, we are creating that pool of technologies within the NIUA, so that a repository of technologies which can be made available to the cities, and they can contextualize, appropriately select those technology, contextualize in their own environment and apply that. Third area which we are doing is training and capacity building. We are now moved, as you know, online training mode. We have started a national urban learning platform. We have almost 27 institutes and 83 partners who have come to this online training mode, and they are imparting that training online mode, and we are moving towards the whole e-learning where we can reach the scale much faster. And fourth is, lot of cities have done a best practices during this pandemic, and we are capturing those good practices which Indian cities have really done, and we are making them available to a 4,000 urban local bodies constituency, where one city has done, others can apply for that. So we are becoming a repository of innovations, repository of best practices, a repository of different technologies, and that is the way we are supporting cities in India. It's not only smart cities but across the 4,000 urban local bodies, and trying to capture those good practices to take it forward.
Talking about 4,000 urban local bodies, India is a vast country in terms of local governance. So what I see now in the post-pandemic world specifically, that we all know that climate change impacts are imminent. They are going to affect our cities badly. So according to the data, that India ranks 7th among the most affected countries globally as per the Global Climate Risk Index 2021. So we think that India is on an urbanization fast track. We are building cities, we are bringing so many missions for rebuilding cities, making cities resilient and effective, smart. So how do you see that climate smart cities framework assessment by the NIOA, it is very timely, and how do you see that it is going to impact at the local level, how cities are going to respond and what are their benefits?
You know, you will be surprised that climate self-assessment framework which NIU has launched is the first of its kind self-assessment framework across the world. You know, there's not such a scale, no country has done that, and India in this time under climate assessment framework, we covered 126 cities with 27 indicators, and these 27 indicators were in 5 broad areas: built environment, energy efficiency, this mobility and air qualities, then they were on urban planning and water and wastewater issues. So these were the 5 areas where we covered these 27 indicators, and you know, very surprisingly, we will see that out of 126 cities, if you see the results coming out of 126 cities, it's really very heartening to know that Indian cities have really started working towards mainstreaming climate actions in their day-to-day options, and these results are really showcasing the initiative, and I will say the pandemic has forced cities to take bull by horn approach, and they are actually working towards mainstreaming climate actions in their day-to-day functions. But this framework, the major objective of this framework was to create awareness among the cities on the climate actions, also to create a capacity building tools for the cities, so they can apply those tools based on the requirement and need which they have. So if some cities cluster of cities are looking at air quality, they can only focus on tools which are available for air quality monitoring. Some cities which are looking at, have a challenge on water and wastewater, they have a tools available for water and wastewater. So that's what area. We are also got climate alliance prepared, where we have around 50 to 60 climate partners. You know, these are multilateral bodies, institutions and all, who are being made available to the cities, so they can handhold cities to really create a roadmap for a climate action implementation which comes out of the assessment. How do they take up the whole implementation roadmap for the city? So that's another area. We are also tying up with the training institutes who can then be made responsible to ensure that capacity based on that need-based capacity can be created. So these are the areas which NIO is supporting. The major focus is not only talk about assessment but take it to an action-oriented approach, and that is where we are supporting cities now move away from just assessments and to actual actions on the ground.
taking cue what you said, that the cities are responding very well, you said that, and they are very interested also to take the climate related works. So the next question is about, because Prime Minister also talked about renewable energy. He has increased the gigabyte that we will be renewable energy we will be building for cities. So we are today in the decade of action.
Yeah.
So we need to hurry up and make cities aware about climate accord, about SDG, new urban agenda. So what are the challenges do you see as a research and also hand-holding institutional support you are providing to cities? How do you see that or what are the main priority areas where we have to focus on right now?
Okay. You will see we have signed in 2015 around 5 global frameworks. India is signatory to these 5 global frameworks, which is SDGs, Paris Agreement, New Urban Agenda, Sendai Framework. All these agreements have been signed. What is the major focus of all these global frameworks is sustainability and inclusiveness. And if you look at all our missions, whether it is Smart City Mission, whether it's Amrut, whether it is a National Urban Livelihood Mission, PMAY, they all are touching one aspect or the other of this sustainability and inclusiveness. And I think, if you will agree with me, India, these global frameworks came into 2015, whereas we had started working on these missions in 2014 when the new government came, when the President of India addressed the Parliament. We had already talked about water to all. We have already talked about universal access to the services. We have talked about bringing 100 smart cities. So it will not be, India was thinking much earlier than even the global stalwarts were thinking about. Knowing the Indian complexity and the scale, I think we may have been little slow, and because of pandemic we might be little slow, but I think the thinking wise, the policy direction is in a right strategies and how we achieve that. So we are talking about decreasing energy demand, whereas we are also looking at measures to improve the renewable energy. We are moving towards green-blue infrastructure, and IUA is actually supporting Master Plan of Delhi 2041, and we are doing and the first time we have taken an approach from the typical master planning to a strategic planning, and the focus is how to improve green and blue infrastructure. Our focus is how to link these initiatives within the master planning process. And while doing a master plan of Delhi, our focus was not to create a master plan, but to create those principles of planning, which are based on those principles which have been established by these global frameworks. So we are already working on that, and I think India is in a right path. And I will say that while SDGs will be depending on how India performs on these indicators, and the success and failure of SDGs will be on success and failure of India.
That is a very important point that you made, but we were really ahead of time, and we made policies for sustainability and inclusivity, and also how to make sure that the person standing the last person in the queue is getting benefit of all the civic services that is rendered by municipal corporations. So, but we have seen that there have been many hiccups when we were doing all these things. So, but there were some resource constraints in certain places. There was some issue of knowledge sharing between cities. How do you see that? Do you think it is very important for Indian cities to have some global collaborations and knowledge sharing platform? Because many Indian cities have best practices, no doubt they have, but there are different cities. Like, if I will give you one example, like when we talked about drive-through vaccination programs, that was very successful in South Korea, and then Mumbai and Delhi, they also implemented. So there are many areas where cities can learn. Do you think that global collaboration and cooperation from the city level, I'm not talking about the national level, national governments talking to each other, but city levels, city to city collaborations, what is their role and how important that is?
No, again, I do agree with you, but India has taken two-pronged approach. One approach is that of creating a policy framework at the national level. So you create a much better policy framework where you can make these global partners available to the cities. Second is actually a operational framework where you create those market oriented structures at the local level, and we are trying to open up a market through a policy framework, make that cities available, knowledge available to cities. So I do agree with you that there is a huge need for knowledge and all, but I have a little answer. I think there has been so much of knowledge. Learning from best practice is a good thing, and we all need to do it. But best practice has to be contextualized within the city thing. You can't just pick up Singapore and make Bihar Sharif as a Singapore. It has to look at the processes, the real need, the demand of it. So, and I think that's the role institutions like NIUA has to be. We have to be the, or All India Institute of Local Self-Government has to be. We have to be the honest broker. We have to perform that role where we have to link the demand and supply together and create that link between the best practices and the demand of the cities. You know, just picking up a best practices and showing it will not happen. So we need to invest in the platforms, we need to invest in the knowledge sharing devices, and there I definitely need lot of investment. We call it a soft investment, but I think soft investment is a hard to get, whereas hard investment is soft to get. So we need to focus on those soft investment where we need to focus how do we really motivate, incentivize, as well as create those leadership domains within the urban local bodies to bring that knowledge to a right person, a right knowledge at a right time.
You have rightly said that we cannot make Bihar Sharif Singapore. Similarly, this brings to my question to about 74th Constitutional Amendment Act that is in talks. When we speak to mayors, they have always that is a complaint from them that 74th Amendment has not been implemented uniformly. It has in certain states it has been implemented very well, but in certain states it is not. So how do you see that the urban local governance reforms, if you put it that way, how do you see that is very important for cities right now?
I think 74th Amendment definitely was the paradigm shift. We need to work on it. I do agree with you that its implementation has been a biggest challenge we have seen. It's been almost 25 years now that this amendment is there. Some states have done very well, some has not done very well. I definitely think that cities need to be empowered. Cities need to be more, we need to give the more functions to the cities. But I also simultaneously feel that if it has not worked, then there must be some challenge within the 74th issues. So, and so much of things have moved. The water has flown in the rivers that we have seen things changing. The issues, urban issues which were there in 1992 has changed totally. You know, the financial requirements have changed. The role of mayors and role of the practitioners have changed. I think it's a high time that we might need to revisit 74th Amendment. maybe again institutions like NIUA and other partner institutions like ALSG, we might need to go back to the drawing board and see what worked, what did not work, why it did not work, and then maybe come up with a new suggestive framework which might be, minimum things which cities have to be taken up. Maybe look at it. Yeah.
Because NIUA has been working for last 45 years.
Yeah.
It is a long time, and this 74th amendment is just 20-25 years old.
Yeah.
So is there any study on the impact of 74th constitutional amendment on the local governance, on elected representatives, their mindset? Has there been any study on that?
There has been, not maybe directly by NIU, but different organizations like Janagraha, like Praja Foundation, like other, maybe All India Institute of Local, have done those studies. My only thing is that the studies have not had seen that impact which we need to really be, and that is why I think it's a time to go back to drawing board, and maybe a pool of parallel organization need to sit together based on these studies which has come, what has been the lesson learned, what has been the challenges, and maybe involve.
Still, because I'm asking this question because the city like Chandigarh, the mayoral term is 1 year. The mayor says, when you ask him what are your plans, he says our first 3 months goes in this welcome ceremony and everything, and the last 3 months go in
going on. I know. See, in India also we have some states where we have a 5-year mayoral term, we have a 2.5
years term, direct elections, indirect elections.
Total complex, and that is where I again and again go that things have worked, some things have not. We need to really revisit 74 CA. We need to revisit the role of elected representatives. We need to empower the municipal cadre. There has been a huge discussion of establishing municipal cadre, whether it works or not. Those are the points of deliberations, because, and I think it's a high time that we visit, because issues like climate, issues like air quality, issues like inclusivity, issues like urban regional planning, these are the new, even though we had that, but the way the urbanization has changed, the way the structures have changed, it's a high time that we need to have that new dialogue within the urban ecosystem to see what works, what does not work. It's saying that 74th was did not work, now it will work, is not. So we need to be a very, very, very conscious approach of things which we have learned last 20 years. Why it did not happen? What was the challenge why things did not work? Center created, it was a state, urban is a state subject. States had to empower urban local bodies with that. So the problem lies in the states and states' way of thinking of it. We had 14th Finance Commission which had put up performance incentives. We have 15th Finance Commission coming up with a new incentive. I think this is a fortunate time to really revisit the whole governance and institutional framework of third tier of governance, and see how we can relook at it. Maybe, and I can go about it. Earlier we used to talk about central sponsored schemes or a mission. Maybe also look at it how states can access that. Even that is the way to really enforce the change in the governance module and all those things. Whether there should be a state and cities partner, or cities and state and all tripartite agreement has to, but those are the new areas where we need to definitely explore. But I think it requires a much more deeper deliberation and much more deeper dive now to look at what needs to be done if we really, and I definitely see cities are the engines and of the growth which we have been talking about, but this engine requires that governance wheels, and unless you go back to the governance wheels will get stuck into 74th. We need to start moving now beyond 74th and start thinking about new ways. So unless we go into a governance wheel, the pace which we are managing urbanization may not be easy. So I definitely think that's a big challenge.
So back to pandemic again, because pandemic has taught many lessons to cities, how to conduct themselves, how to plan their transport system, how to plan solid waste management, a lot of things. So during the pandemic, some certain activities were allowed during the lockdown. When it was phased wise, it was lifted. The major challenge for cities, for urban local governments, was how to move people safely. And many people started talking about cycling, from when Paris presented 15-minute city plan, some presented 8-minute city plan. So how do you see that? Do you think that cycling is a feasible idea for Indian cities, looking at the climate conditions, the condition of roads, and even for the pedestrians, the kind of facilities we require for the safe walking is required in cities. So do you think that cycling and walking is a very good concept for Indian cities?
I think you have to look at it, why did the cycling really came? It has been there in the Indian discourse for a long time. Why it suddenly gained the momentum during the pandemic was two reasons. One was that during the pandemic situation, mass transit got disrupted. People could not take a mass transit because of fear of getting into COVID situation, fear of getting affected. Those were the big challenges during the pandemic. Now, when they moved from the, I think the whole movement was on the private vehicles. So more private vehicles started coming up, and we saw the congestion also increasing. We saw people moving from the different modes of transport, which also had its own impact. But it was not including everybody does not have a own private vehicle. So there was a force that cycle was looked as an alternative. It was looked at giving a green space, fresh air to the people. It was looked as a commuting mode of commutation for the people. It was more inclusive, so everybody could use that, and that's the discourse which started momentum in the country. I agree with you. There are a lot of challenges of moving from the to the cycle mode within the Indian transit system, but there are no alternatives. Cycle may not be pedal cycle. We may look at other way of technology based cycling, where we have like kind of battery operated cycles or something like that. Can be a possibility. But cycle provided two things. One was health, one was commuting, inclusive commuting mode, and both were required during the pandemic situation. The major thing which I agree with you on that is cycle should not be looked as a mode of adventure or a support. It should be looked as a providing last mile connectivity, which some cities like Ahmedabad and others have started doing it. But it requires three things. It requires change of mindset, because people we have a thing that if you have a cycle, you may not be in a good in hierarchy. So everybody has to think, how do I use that? Social issues also has to be addressed. Second thing is, it also required to look at behaviors, change within the people. It has to look at the technology which I talk about, also the processes of looking at it. So I definitely agree, we need to invest more onto the cycling infrastructure rather than the cycle. The cycle has to be made and last mile connectivity. While we have to improve our mass transit systems, has to be improved, because you have no alternative to mass transit system in Indian society. You can't get away with the mass transit system. So I think mass transit, while we are promoting mass transit system, we have to improve behavior into using the mass transit system. Maybe how do you form the social distancing norm within the public transit system? How do you form the behavior that it's not get crowded? How do you make a contactless entry to the thing, and outside ticketing system, all of that processes have to be improved. But cycling, as for me, I'm thinking, should be a last mile connectivity. Once you get down from the thing, you can have a possibility of taking up a cycle and then going to a thing. Because, you know, again, I come from a place called Dwarka, which is 26 kilometers from my office. You can't expect me to take a cycling for 26 kilometers every day and 26 kilometers back. What we can say is that I reach a place where I can at least reach within 5-10 minutes from that place to my office, and using that mode, and I don't need to do within the. So those type of models definitely be available and should be encouraged. But just thinking that total cycle, but I think cycle should be on a transit, incremental, whatever way of looking at it, and intermediate transport system.
Very apt point about we need to build cycle infrastructure when we are talking about promoting cycling in cities. And now we have talked about a lot of issues on climate change, urban priorities, urban local governance. Now we talk about what Prime Minister has said. He has said that India will become $5 trillion economy in years to come. So I have 2-3 questions interlinked. The first one is that what will be the role of cities in this 5 trillion economy scenario? And the second one, the related question, is that are our cities ready to support that vision of Prime Minister in terms of capacity, in terms of providing infrastructure services, also this transport services to people, those are going to come to those cities. So what is your viewpoint on role of cities in making India $5 trillion economy?
See, India, so 5 trillion economy, if happens, will happen only with the cities. 5 trillion economy cannot happen without cities, because 60% of our GDP is coming from cities, and cities are that engine of growth. Right now, we need to focus on urbanization and its linkages with economic development, and which is where we need to bring how cities become that engine of economic growth. How do they really create those disruptive innovative ways of doing that, they start moving towards 5 trillion economy. If you ask me, the 5 trillion economy is totally linked of how India becomes, again, the Honorable Prime Minister's slogan of Atmanirbhar India. Unless we become Atmanirbhar, we will not become a 5 trillion. And in becoming Atmanirbhar, we need to do 3 things. One is, we have to increase the credit worthiness of cities. We have to find out the ways how cities can improve their own source revenues. We have to link rural and urban economy and look at rural urban as a region as a whole, rather than urban and rural in silos, because the skill labor will come from the thing, and urban will provide services. How do you link those things? So these 3 or 4 steps has to be looked at. Data and technology is the key in all of that. So that's the 4th thing which we have to look at it, because 5 trillion. And lastly, which I'll say, unless we start linking the 5 trillion economy vision within the performance indicators of urban local bodies, this may not happen. So each city has to see how it is contributing towards that economy. So its plans, its missions and all, he should be understanding these actions of yours in terms of monetary terms contribute to the 5 trillion economy. So again, whether it's the SDGs, whether other goals, those big global goals or big visions have to actually turn into the city's day-to-day actions, and that linkages where their performance is monitored, they feel that they are contributing towards this big vision, they feel that whatever action they are taking up is actually leading to this thing, that a relationship has to be built, and cities have to understand that yes, I am contributing, and that is the empowerment. This, yes, I am contributing. It's not a vision of the Prime Minister, or it's not a vision of the SDGs 192 country. It's our vision, and we are like UN goals till today, and I'll say that till today we say it's UN goals. It is in the country has to use our goals, because we are the signatories for this goal. So unless we get that knowledge from trickle down to the urban local bodies, what is, and really concretize in their action oriented approach, we will not be able to reach that vision. And for that, I think, again I'll come back, the organizations like NIUA has to provide those tools, have to provide those technologies, have to provide those templates.
Question is related to that what you are saying, because you rightly said that cities' role is going to be paramount. If India becomes the $5 trillion economy, the role of cities will be very significant. But my question is, many cities in India like Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, these are very few specific. We can maybe count 10-12 cities which contribute large proportion to the GDP, national GDP. How we can trickle down to these tier 2, tier 3 cities if we want to make sure that the development is inclusive, the population distribution is even. So and in this direction, my last question is, this is my last question, that what NIUA is envisioning the role of Indian cities and how you are contributing towards that?
See, the cities will do the work which they are already doing. They are already doing a lot of work. The role of NIUA is actually to create those enabling frameworks, so that they start really coming up with those needs which contributes to the global dialogue. And for that, we are within NIUA, we are saying that how, as an institution, as a think tank, how we can facilitate through tools, through technologies, through training, and through templates and frameworks and standards. We are coming up, like I'll give you an example which we have been talking about. We have come up with the National Urban Digital Mission. We are looking at 9 functions which are citizens engagement services which cities are providing. How we can create a centralized way of standards for these functions that cities can start building on that. So cities become digitally empowered to provide those services to cities. So as an NIUA, our role still remains, and we are also looking at internally changing up. We are saying that all our actions which we are doing and have to be working within has to be result oriented, has to be impact oriented, have to have a scale. We need to really think about a scale. And fourth is, they have to promote entrepreneurship. They have to bring the private sector into things. Private sector has to start engaging. And lastly, they have to be inclusive. So I have, for NIUA, I have kept my vision as called RISE. And I think that's the way we are moving towards supporting cities, that whatever action we do, it really meets the key asks of state and city. So we become a value added organization rather than just doing a routine work thing. So all, as the cities have to change business as usual approach to a new approaches or new disruptive ways of doing things, as an institutions who are institutions of governance and creating those thinking has to also change our model of delivering services. So I think it has to be balanced. All of us has to think. There is no single quick fix answer for that. We all, I think this is a real time, and pandemic has shown us real challenges. We need to really go back to the drawing table again and start thinking what should be our models of engagement, what should be our models of providing, and I think support, what should be our model of bringing capacity issues. What are those challenges which city urbanization is facing, cities are facing, how we can be giving a, rather than just a one size fit all approach, very contextualized support to the cities. I think these 5 areas, if we look at it, we will be able to really be ahead of the thinking curve and start delivering the services.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving detailed activities, your details of your vision, how you want to make cities independent and prosperous, inclusive. Lot of things you have talked about. So I'm good luck to the activities that you are planning. Thank you very much for giving time for this interview.
Thank you very much for engaging, and thank you very much for asking me for this. And I think, institutions like AILSG and IUA, we have a huge responsibility to do in the new way of thinking. Prime Minister has already laid the broad vision. It's we institution how we pick up that vision and start creating our actions toward it, because his role is not actions, has to become of an institution, and it's a challenge is on us to link ourselves, align ourselves with our meeting and help cities to reach that vision. And I look forward to work with you people, work with the urban ecosystem, which we have already started with the partnership. One and IUA will not be enough. We need hundreds of institutions to come together and start thinking towards this paradigm and transformational change of India.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, viewers. And in the next episode, we'll be back again. Till then, keep watching Urban Update. Thank you.